Kashyyyk was one of the most beautiful planets in the galaxy, a wonder of the known universe, covered by kilometers-high Wookiee trees. In the deepest parts of the planet's forests, such as the region around Ruk'raro, many of the indigenous Wookiees spent their entire lives up in the canopies of these massive trees, the majesty of which was renowned the galaxy over. But Kashyyyk had a darker side to it as well. The floor of its great forest, which the Wookiees called the Shadowlands, was one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy, a dark place of monstrous beasts and Wookiee superstitions, pervaded by a darkness that would make a Sith Lord shudder. In this video, we'll be telling the full story of this little seen part of Kashyyyk.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
In the words of Captain Pelion, Kashyyyk was a layered death trap. The Wookiee canopy of the deep forests and the scattered coastal regions where the Wookiees lived were pleasant, beautiful, and relatively safe, but the rest of the planet was untamed and full of some of the galaxy's most dangerous beasts. The Wookiees of the deep forest divided their world into 7 levels, with the 7th and uppermost level being the safest, and the first, the Shadowlands, being the most dangerous. The levels between, which ranged from the lower branches of the Wookiees to their sprawling roots, were all dangerous to varying degrees, home to Kinrath spiders, bat-like mycals, and flame beetles. Wookiees often ventured into the lower levels of the forest to hunt, but they rarely descended below level 4. Strong though the Wookiees were, even they had to be wary of Kashyyyk's darkest depths. As their name suggested, the Shadowlands were shrouded in permanent darkness. Even on the brightest days, very little sunlight was able to make it all the way down to the forest floor due to the density of the upper forest. This alone made the Shadowlands pretty dangerous, but the true danger to trespassers was the local wildlife. Virtually everything in the Shadowlands could kill you in strange and painful ways, including the plants, and most of the forest floor's beasts were extremely vicious and intelligent. The most dangerous creatures of the Shadowlands included enormous anaconda snakes, the vicious Khatan lizard mammals, and several varieties of giant spider. The anaconda could swallow Wookiees whole and hid among the tangled vines and giant roots of the lower forests. The Khatans, meanwhile, were scaly masters of stealth with sharp teeth, horns, and claws, well known for tracking their prey for long distances before staging sudden and often lethal surprise attacks. Because of their cunning and ferocity, Khatans were often used as mascots by commando units, an indication of just how dangerous they were. Even more feared than the Khatan were several species of giant spider, most notably viper Kinraths and Kashyyyk, whose webs practically covered the Shadowlands. Viper Kinrath were the tougher and more aggressive relatives of the common Kinrath found in Kashyyyk's upper forests and on Dantooine. They hunted in groups and attacked their prey with a long, arm-mounted, venom-coated tooth. But not even they were as dangerous as the Kashyyyk, the most dangerous of all Kashyyyk's predators. These huge spiders, also known as web weavers, could track their prey for over a kilometer, were intelligent enough to work in groups, and could kill even the toughest opponents in moments with their potent venom and thick webbing. If you've played Jedi Fallen Order, you probably still have nightmares of fighting these guys, and those Kashyyyk were actually lightweights compared to the ones from Legends. Also worth mentioning are the Terentatek, which weren't native to Kashyyyk but ended up in the Shadowlands anyway. The Terentatek were ferocious Sith-born beasts that fed on the blood of Jedi, and a small population of them existed in the darkest depths of the Shadowlands, slaughtering all that crossed their paths. All told, the Shadowlands were an extremely dangerous place, but that wasn't the only thing that made them terrifying. The vibes of the place were off. Just being in the Shadowlands was an unsettling experience. Colossal tree trunks stretched unfathomably high above, splitting into distant, half-glimpsed tangles of branches through which only a few thin beams of light could penetrate their huge roots, wound through the lower levels covered in vines and webs. A persistent mist shrouded much of the corpse-choked underbrush, and the cries of 1,000 beasts echoed through the trees at all hours. And the unsettling nature of this scene was accentuated by a persistent spiritual darkness that lay over the Shadowlands, a taint on the Force. There were dark things in the depths of Kashyyyk, more sinister than any simple beast. This gave rise to many Wookiee myths about the Shadowlands. The most ancient legends held that they had climbed out of the Shadowlands in the distant past, and that they had to battle the C'tan for rule of Kashyyyk. In the words of Chewbacca, "Once the C'tan hunted us, and the highlands of the forest was theirs for 1,000 generations. But their hunting did not destroy us. Nothing of this world is to be squandered, my son. The C'tan gave the Wookiees its strength and courage, and allowed the Wookiees to find the Raktor. Now we repay them by returning the gift. Someday, it will be their turn again." This Raktor Chewie speaks of is the inner fire and battle fury common to all Wookiees, and they believed that it was a part of a dialectic between them and the C'tan. They were meant to hunt each other endlessly, turning the tables again and again to make each other steadily stronger. Thus, Wookiee warriors descended down into the Shadowlands for ritual C'tan hunts. The most well-known of these was the Heretic, or the Test of Ascension, in which young Wookiees would have to live in the Shadowlands for a time, hunting the local beasts in order to unlock the Raktor and become adults. Many Wookiees never returned to the Shadowlands after this ritual, but the greatest warriors descended at other times as part of other hunts or rituals. The most dangerous of these was the hunting of the Terentatek, a truly impressive feat that even Wookiee chieftains often failed to accomplish. However, the Shadowlands were much more than just a hunting ground to the Wookiees. They were the very embodiment of darkness and killing to the Wookiees, the corruption of the spirit and the merciless dichotomy of predator and prey. They were not just the place the Wookiees had escaped from in the distant past, but the animal state that they had risen above. They were not just a place where it was easy to die, but also to dishonor themselves. To the Wookiees, the Shadowlands weren't just touched by the dark side, they were the dark side. That was why the Wookiees banished their mad claws, those among them who had become like beasts, to the Shadowlands. As they saw it, the Shadowlands had already taken their minds. Likewise, Wookiees that chose to live in the Shadowlands were forbidden from entering the villages of the upper forest, lest they bring the Shadowlands with them. What the Wookiees sensed about the Shadowlands were true. They were not just a dangerous place, but a corrupting force. The reason why lay in the darkest depths of the Shadowlands, near Rukraro. This source of Kashyyyk's darkness was an ancient machine. Great and powerful, self-repairing, and steeped in the power of the dark side. The Builder Forge. In the distant past, Kashyyyk had been one of the earliest conquests of the Rakata, known to many species as the Builders. They wanted to use Kashyyyk as an agricultural world to feed the armies of their infinite empire, but initially, Kashyyyk was unable to sustain sufficient levels of production. To correct this, the Rakata decided to terraform the planet, and to accomplish this, they installed the Builder Forge. The Builder Forge was meant to accelerate the evolution of Kashyyyk's flora and fauna to make the planet a more efficient agri-world. How exactly it did this was unknown, but it likely involved the dark side, which is what powered all of the Rakata's great machines. For some reason, the Rakata abandoned Kashyyyk early on, in 33,598 BBY. However, they forgot to shut off the Builder Forge before they left, and a little over 200 years after their departure, the machine suffered a malfunction. It continued to accelerate the evolution of Kashyyyk's wildlife well beyond what the Rakata had intended, and the dark side nature of the machine made the planet's native beasts exceptionally brutal and dangerous. In other words, the Builder Forge created Kashyyyk as we know it. At some point, The machine appears to have stopped spurring rapid evolution on Kashyyyk, but it continued to pour darkness into the Shadowlands. Its self-repairing Rakatan technology kept it functional indefinitely. The secret shadowy heart of Kashyyyk. The Shadowlands of Kashyyyk were a place of danger and darkness, a mystical place where few dared tread. Unless you were Jolie Bindo, that is, a former Jedi who lived alone in the Shadowlands for 20 years, earning a reputation among the Wookiees for being absolutely insane. But what do you think? Are there other dark places in the Star Wars universe you'd like us to discuss? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments below.